Hello, this is the part 1 video of Algebra 2 Chapter 4 test review, and we're going to complete questions 1 through 6 in this video. So let's take a look at number 1. So the first thing I notice is that it is quadratic. It's quadratic because it has squared, but I also notice that it doesn't have a linear term. So linear means like 2x or 5x. There's nothing there. So what I could do instead of making it equal to 0 and factoring it, I can just go ahead and get this isolated. So I'm going to add 30 to both sides, which gives me 4x squared equals 144. And then I'm going to get rid of the 4. Remember, when you're solving, you want to try to add and subtract first, and then you want to multiply and divide. Okay, now we're x squared equals 36. So when you take the square root of both sides, you have to include both a positive and a negative. Sometimes this is perfect, sometimes it's not. This one is perfect. So you actually get 2 answers. So you end up with a positive 6 and a negative 6. And you can write your answer, you can write your answer like this if you want to. Now, if you try to depend on Desmos, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to graph each side on its own. So you would type in 4x squared minus 30. That would be the first line. And then the second line, you have to do y equals 114. If you just type in 114, it's not going to graph anything. You can graph it that way, figure out where they intersect. If you don't want to do that, you can also get it equal to 0 and graph it that way. So you have 4x squared, and then you need to subtract 114 from both sides. You don't even have to simplify. If you just type that in like this into Desmos, it will intersect the x-axis at a negative 6 and a positive 6. So for question number 2, if you have access to Desmos, obviously just go ahead and type it in, the whole thing into Desmos, and you can see what it looks like. But what if this is not one that you had access to a calculator on? What I would do is think about, well, what does my parent graph look like? So my parent graph starts at 0, 0 because it is the square root. Okay, and if you plug in 0, you wind up with 0. If you plug in a 1 for x, the square root of 1 is 1. If you plug in a 2, you get a decimal. I'm not going to use that one. If you plug in a 4, the square root of 4 is 2. So these are like the 3 easiest points to graph. So your parent graph is going to look something like that. Okay, so this plus 2, that means it's going to go up 2. This plus 4, you see how it's with the x under the square root. That means you're going to go to left 4. So you're going to take each point. I'm going to change colors. And I'm going to go up 2, left 4. So up 2, left 4. Up 2, left 4. Okay, remember it starts here and continues out here. If you don't use translations, you can also use a table, but that's the easiest thing to do. Okay, so question number 3, this is one where you have a cube root, and what you want to do is isolate everything in the root. So anything that is outside that root on the left side needs to go. So I'm going to get rid of this minus 2. I'm going to add 2 to both sides. These cancel out, get 0. Now that this is isolated, I can get rid of the cube root. To get rid of the cube root, I am going to cube both sides. Cube and cube root cancel out. That leaves me with x plus 5. That's still 0. And then finish it out by solving for x. You don't need to check any cube root equation unless you want to just check it for accuracy. There are no false or extraneous solutions here. So on question number 4, you're going to have to be very careful how you do this one because this is already isolated. So instead of cubing this, I'm going to square it because it's a square root function. But I want you to notice something. I am squaring a variable. And when you square a variable, this is going to cause an extraneous solution. This will be on your EOC, so make sure you're paying attention. So when you square a square root, you're fine. So that's just 4x plus 5. But if you square a variable, it creates one of these extraneous solutions. Now, this one is similar to the first one in that it's quadratic, but it has a linear term. If it has a linear term, you cannot solve for x squared. You're going to have to make it equal to 0, and you're going to have to factor it. Now, if you don't know how to factor, if you have access to Desmos, the solutions, if you type this into Desmos, the solutions will be on the x-axis. Okay, so if you are going to factor it, we need to find the factors of -5 that add up to be -4. It's going to be -5 and +1. Remember, factors are not solutions, so you have to set each factor equal to 0, and then you're going to solve for each x. So I think this could be a solution, and I think this one could be a solution. But remember, we're probably going to have an extraneous solution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to come over here and I'm going to have to check both of these. So if I wanted to check x equals 5, you need to go back to your original function. And the original function looks like this. Okay. Then you're going to replace the 5 for any x. Then you have to verify, make sure that the left side is equal to the right side. So is the square root of 25 equal to 5? Yes, it is. So this one checks out. That means that this is going to be an actual solution. But I suspect if I check -1, it's not going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in -1 for the x. Okay, so I know that this is going to wind up being +1, and +1 cannot equal to a -1, so I'm going to throw this one out. This one is extraneous, just in case it asks you about it. So that's my only answer. Okay, so question number 5 just asks what the first step would be. So all I need to do is just verify that my square root is isolated, and it is. So the first step would be to square both sides. Now, if you were going to finish this question, you would have to square this. I would use the box to square it. And then it's going to be, you're probably going to have an extraneous solution, so make sure you check the answer. But this one just asked for the first step, so we're done. Okay, this is a square root. So I'm going to start out by squaring both sides. Notice that I am not squaring a variable. So 7 squared is 49. I'm not going to have to check the solution. It's not going to produce anything that's extraneous. So if I square a square root, I get x minus 5, and simply get x by itself. And that's it for part 1.